So, welcome everybody to this support session on the DIT qualification this morning. My name's Tim Brady. I'm the subject advisor for computer science and IT. And what I hope to do in this short session today would be to let you drive the agenda. I've got all sorts of bits and pieces we can jump around and go into, but I'm interested in hearing from you about specific questions so that I can try and address them in this forum today. So if any of you have any particular issues you'd like to start with, just type them into the message box or put your hand up and I'll give you the mic and you'll be able to ask them that way. So a good place to start, I don't see any, it's so big for learners to complete. Alex, okay, so an interesting question. So you're talking about the overall size of the qualification for the 120 guided learning hours. I don't think it's any bigger really than the GCSE ICT. It may feel bigger in that it's a new qualification, but the content is the content is designed to try and engage and be sensible. So yes, delivery will be a challenge, and we're going to I can show you delivery plans. There's a course planner, a 2-year course planner in the support materials that you can download, which is a Gantt chart equivalent of what is on our website, but where I've also included the opportunity to deal with the opportunity for the January session for component 3 in 2020, so that you give your students a chance to have 2 shouts at that. Is there a submission date for a 2-year plan? So the internally assessed units, component 1 and component 2, you set the timing for yourselves. You work with your SV, you'll do the assessments as you go along, and so there's no deadline per se. It's not like a piece of coursework from GCSE or CIDA where there was a hand-in date. It's not going to work like that. You'll talk to your SV. Your SVs should be being allocated November, December timeframe. Hopefully by the end of this term, you'll have your SV, you'll know them, and you'll be able to talk to them. And when you have, I've been asked a question here, if we have a 2-year plan, can we deviate it from it? Is that an issue? No. What you'll do for the internally assessed units is set up a sensible assessment plan where through the 2 years you do your best to predict when it will likely be that your learning aim B for component 2 will be ready, and when your component 2 work is all ready for sampling, and when your component 1 work is ready for sampling. And you'll do your best to lay that out during the course of the 2 years, and that will go to your SV at a very early stage, and that's called the assessment plan. It's no more than you would do if you were trying to plan another qualification in terms of what's going to happen when, but it's absolutely not fixed and needing to be unchanged. You work with your SV to modify that. So if in the second week after Easter you decided to do an assessment of a learning aim, but then there was a terrible tragedy in the school or in the local community and you needed to move that, you just change the plan, send it to your SV and have a discussion. Having said that, when it's important, so take the second year of delivery, and it will be absolutely vital that all of the information is back in time for awarding in the summer. So there is a deadline that your SV will discuss with you, and they'll say something like, we want to have all of the internally assessed work sampled before May. of that year. And the reason for that is just to do everything that we can to ensure that by the time the summer results are needed, we will have had the opportunity to do the standards verification process, send a report back to you with any actions that are needed, and those actions can have been taken and everything. So do they sample both units? So the sampling plan for the DIT, if everything goes well, it would mean that there would be a single unit sampled, a component sampled. If they found issues or they were concerned about some of the stuff they saw in the first sampled unit, they may sample unit 2. So all things being equal, if everything goes smoothly, one of the components, one of the internal components only need to be sampled. Okay, welcome people. There's quite a few people that have joined. We dived in and made a start, and I'm just answering some questions ad hoc from the chat bar. But I hope everybody can hear me. If you find your toolbar on your screen somewhere, you should be able to put your hand up in order to get my attention, or type questions into the chat box. So I was asked early on about flipping paperwork, and I get that. People who are coming from qualifications which have a light touch in terms of admin, such as GCSE, ICT, CIDA, you know, the BTEC process can seem a bit hairy. So I do want to show you a couple of things about why the extra steps that are in place are worth it, and the extra documents that are needed help to keep you and the learners safe, and make sure that they can succeed to the very best. Okay, so in that respect, one of the links that I've got in your materials attached is delivering BTEC qualifications. So I'm just going to go to that now quickly, because it's under support topics, see all topics, and delivering BTEC qualifications. So that there's a link to this in your materials, so you don't have to go there. We had a massive effort in the last 2 or 3 months to try and put something together on the website that makes the delivery cycle you see down here a little bit easier to grasp for people coming to it new. The first part of the page, which we're fighting to redesign and change, is all to do with how you first become a BTEC center. And also there's information there about quality review. So say above this line here, all of this stuff would be quality nominee level stuff and center level stuff. For you as a teacher, in terms of delivery cycle, this is our attempt to try and demystify a little bit why it seems different. So we start with registering learners. You need to have a team, and that can be a one-person team. You identify your lead internal verifier. That would normally be the subject lead. If there is 2 or 3 people in a department, the subject lead would take the role of lead internal verifier. Normally, it doesn't have to be, but for the sake of delivering the BTEC. And then the other teachers would have the role of assessor. And the lead internal verifier has lots of special responsibilities and power over the way that the delivery happens. We come then to creating an assignment, creating an assignment brief, creating the assessment plan. So this is something at an early stage that's sent to your standards verifier, the SV being the first person outside your company. That's the language and lingo of BTEC is another thing that we need to get used to. So your standards verifier would be the equivalent of the moderator. And important to say that it's not moderation, it's standards verification. So in the center, you own the assessments. You own the responsibility for doing the assessments. So you create an assignment brief, or you get the authorized assignment brief that we publish. We can have a look at those in a little while. And then you perform internal assessment. Now, I like to break this up a little bit. Just bear with me while I go to a silly little Wix site that I created to help explain. There's a starting point of delivering BTECs where, you know, the center has to be approved and the qualification goes onto the list of approved programs. There's the finishing where the exams officer will organize to we call claim results at the end of the process. And in the middle here is where we're really interested in looking at teaching and assessing, and also to try and help explain, you know, the idea of the paperwork. So for our DIT qualification, we've got the three components. You know, if you take component 3, which is an exam sat in year 2, it doesn't have to be, but it's only available in year 2 for you because you're starting now. So this is relatively straightforward in terms of how does that work. There's an entry date, and then the students sit the assessment. There would be 2 assessment opportunities every year. So for component 3, that's why I put together my own version of the delivery plan, because it takes advantage of the January session in the students' year 11, and then the summer session as a resit if needed. So talking about the internal components, component 1 and component 2, they both have 3 learning aims. So I'm going to go into component 1 now, and the content inside component 2, or this process, will be exactly the same. So here are the 3 learning aims. Now, this process goes down here, and down here, and at the end, you see you've now assessed the work for the whole component. You can send samples to your SV. Now, this would be similar to where you get to at the end of a large coursework process, where you would at the end have your stuff, you know, wrapped up and sent off for moderation. What's happening in between here and here is different. So here's the important thing: you take, and it's also set up so that you can assess Learning Aim A on its own, assess Learning Aim B, and assess Learning Aim C. So it's possible to have as many as 3 assessments going on. If you have questions that you can't get through the chat box, just put your hand up and I'll try and notice that and get to answer you. So let's just go through Learning Aim A. So you start by teaching the content. So all content must be taught. I think it's very important to do a practice assessment for Learning Aim A, because what we need to get across is that the assessment part of BTECs is a formal assessment. And it's important that students understand if they don't hand in work when you give them the deadline, they can be failed. And if they fail Learning Aim A, they fail component 1. And if they fail component 1, they fail the qualification. So that sounds very draconian, and the lead internal verifier has got great scope within the guidelines for giving kids another chance, and we'll talk about the details and the subtleties of that later on. But it's an important point to get across to students. So a practice assessment, a practice formal assessment, is a really good idea. So you obtain or you create your own assignment brief, so you can take the authorized assignment brief, and then you set up the assessment dates. Now, as soon as you've taken an assignment brief, even if it's our authorized assignment brief, and you're going to add the name of the assessor, and you're going to add the dates, the handout and hand-in dates, that's you taking ownership of that assessment, and that's why internally you're required to IV. You're required to do that little form that says, this is an appropriate assessment for my students at this time in our center. So then you run the assessment, and we generally recommend that it's short and sweet, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever's the smallest time scale that you feel your students can successfully give evidence for the assessment criteria. After that, you assess your work. There's a requirement for an internal sampling and that should be captured. There should be evidence that that's happened, and then you've got your work ready to send to the SV. So that process is repeated 3 times. So you go through that loop of teaching the content, practice assessment, done, move on. So the paperwork sounds like it's certainly more paperwork than when you do a GCSE. You may do 3. It's also possible to combine learning aim B and C in one assessment, so you've only got 2 cycles to go through. It's also possible to go through it once in one cycle, and there are possibilities for resubmissions and retakes, and they're covered in the guidelines about how that works. Let me see. We were told we could use PowerPoint. So will students have to create a user interface? What level of programming or skills will be required? So the idea about component 1, let's have a look at the spec quickly. The idea about component 1 is that students are being asked to, you must. So a good tip is always to remember what's being looked for is evidence of the assessment criteria. So let's have a look at the assessment criteria. So I'm going to go into the spec, and we're going to look at Unit 1. And the answer is they don't have to build a system, okay? What they need to do is a mock-up of a user interface. If a button in a user interface would generate a complex report, that functionality doesn't have to be built. The button has to be there. So we'll look at, I'm going to go to Unit 1, assessment criteria. So here we are, Unit 1, exploring user interface design principles and project planning. So I'm going to go all the way, just going to skip through the subject content. And here are the assessment criteria. So let's just jump in at distinction. Assess how effectively 2 different types of user interface meet the design principles. So for learning aim A, it's so BTECs are often put together like this. You've got learning aim A would be like research background, learning aim B might be design development, and learning aim C, if possible, is build. And we've tried to stick with that with this qualification, but it's clear that use their plan to develop and design an effective user interface, shows all the features, assess the strengths and weakness of their interface and project plan, justifying decisions made. So right down at learning aim C in the distinction, what we need to see is that they've thought about the interface and the working of the interface, the system beneath it. A complex system sometimes to generate, sophisticated types of reports or screens doesn't need to be built. It stops at the interface. And there's some help for you. This is a web page I'd like to recommend you look at. It's my subject page, and you get to it by subjects, computer science and ICT. And again, this is in the materials section. I've got this downloaded. If you scroll down here, do you see popular topics and then FAQ documents? So we've started to collate. Okay, it's early days, and this FAQs is not huge yet, but as we go through it, it will evolve. This is a useful document, and you can see in here that there are questions about working user interface. Do students have to develop a fully functioning, or can it be just links that are dummy? So we're capturing information about this, and hopefully documents like this, as they evolve, will continue to capture really useful evidence. So I'd suggest you do have a good look in here. So just to show you where that is, again, it's subjects, computer science and ICT. You come to this page, and then popular topics, FAQ documents, and these are for other qualifications as well. So it's a good place to go. And you know, I'll be curating these and updating them as we go along. So I've got a hand up from Mohammed. I've given you the mic. Mohammed, would you like to ask a question? Okay. Hand's gone down. So I'll carry on. Just add buttons, sounds, etc. Yes. So, you know, we're not expecting the students at level 2 here to build a system. Alex, you have the mic.
Hi, I was just wondering, for component 1, learning aim A, for that very first kind of like section where it covers P1, P2, M1, D1, is it acceptable to learners the same 2 user interfaces so that they've got actual physical working examples rather than them giving free rein, and obviously it then makes it a lot more difficult for them?
Well, okay, so does that make it more difficult for them? If you choose, if you say that for your students it makes it more difficult, you're completely, it's completely within your remit to modify or change the assignment brief that's used. Okay. So what we're looking for is evidence. So let's look at learning aim A. Oh, here it is. We're looking for evidence that students can give that enable us to award them these assessment criteria. What vehicle is used to grab that evidence is not mandated by us. We've created
the assignment brief to specify 2 selected user interfaces that all my students will use. My SV won't block me for that.
So the authorized assignment brief says that. So if you use the authorized assignment brief and they don't meet the requirements of the brief that you've used, the SV might have a problem with it. Yeah. So change the assignment brief.
Okay, so if I just take the authorized one and tweak it a little bit, then that should be okay.
This is exactly what, sorry, I'm waving to my family going off for a day. That's exactly what we want centers to do. I mean, just imagine if that authorized assignment brief was like the SPB or the CAB in, you know, the task. If that was the task and it sat there for year after year, you know, this is not the way that a qualification is successful. The idea of putting authorized assignment briefs up is to help people to get started, to give them a framework. Every authorized assignment brief is comprised of a vocational scenario, a set of tasks, and evidence. And they're designed to give students the opportunity to evidence the assessment criteria that you see in that learning aim. So you can redesign your own completely. You need those 3 components. You need to make sure that no task tells the student, if you do this, you get pass, and then if you do that, you get merit, and then if you do that, you get distinction. It must not be like that. Every task must be able to, for students when they attempt it, that if they do a perfect job of the task, they would be at the distinction end, and as they do less good, they would fall down further down on the assessment grid. So there are rules about the way that an assignment brief should be written. When you've written your own assignment brief, there's the assignment checking service. I'm just jumping around on the website. Pardon?
That's a BTEC Online, isn't it?
So here, we're going to go here. Here's how I get it. Assignment checking service, if I could spell. Our website, I mean, I live on our website, and you'll see half the time I use the search bar. So assignment checking service. So in here, Tech Awards, there's a process basically, and what you do, there's some rules to writing assignment brief, step-by-step guide. I mean, if you're making a tweak to the authorized assignment brief, make the tweak, send it in. What you get back is report. Now, remember, the only thing that we can look at in an assignment brief is the vocational scenario, the tasks, and the evidence. The assessment criteria have to be in there, and they have to be the right ones for the learning aim. Okay, we'll look at it and we'll go back to you and say all of those things make sense. When you get it back, you're going to add two things. You're going to add the dates, hand out, hand in, and you're going to add the name of the assessor. As soon as you do that, you now own it, and it's your responsibility. So there's great flexibility in here, and yes, there's more steps, there's more assessment ongoing through the program than there might be with a large piece of coursework. But having it chunked up in pieces like that, having the ability to write an assignment brief which talks about, I think the assignment brief for Learning Aim B talks about stadium. You know, if you're in Derby and Derby County have just got promotion, and that's the stadium you want to do your assignment brief around, you can do it. And this is what's really nice about the BTEC.
Okay, and with Graham's question that he asked in the chat as well, about the use of templates. So, like in the past, like you know, in my opinion, like a template is something which gives learners additional guidance or questions to help them answer the task, which is obviously against some BTEC regulations. When they are answering the actual assignment brief, is it acceptable to take kind of like keywords out of the specification, you know, to give them like some form of basic structure?
No, what you do is in the teaching, you'd make sure that they're fully aware of the spec. Share it with them, you know, as part of the teaching. Make sure they know what the spec is for component one and what the subject content is. Then do a practice assignment brief, which is not a formal assessment, but you can then work through in the practice. You can work through how would you approach this. You know, now you've been asked to provide something. You know, what's the best way to approach it? And this would be normally a normal part of your teaching. If there's a right way to attack something, you can work through that in class. Now, that might mean that you've developed an approach. You might even have developed a template together as a class. And then when they're doing the assignment brief in the formal assessment, where you are not allowed to give them a template, they can refer back to everything that they've been through during the teaching. And they can find those documents and approaches from the teaching that you've been through. So, you know, you do not attach a template that might look like what is it, that if you have a template that has too much words in it, might lead the students, you know. Yeah, so structured. So you keep that out, but you know, you remind the students as they embark upon their assessment, the formal assessment, where you're not allowed to give them help and feedback, that they have access to everything we did in class.
Okay, no, that's fine. Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's good practice. That's just sensible, isn't it? You know, there are standard ways of doing things, and we should have gone through that with the students during the teaching.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Thank you.
Pleasure, Alex. Okay, I'm going to hit you mute, and I'll put your hand down. Mohammed, you've got your hand up. Do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you very much for all your help so far, by the way, to all the people in the chat. The question that I have is, in terms of examiners support, would there be anything to show us what would be like a level 1, level 2 merit, pass, or distinction from the user interface?
So this is what there is, and this is all there's going to be. If we go to the subject area, internal assessments, this is what we have. And we're working, okay, so this is component 1, Learning Aim A, Learning Aim B, and Learning Aim C. Now, this is merit, this is pass, this is distinction. So for, is it Learning Aim C that you asked about?
I believe it's yes, yeah, C, it is.
So that is sample mark learning work for Learning Aim C. This sample mark learner work is going to be what we're going to suggest that the teachers use for standardization to help with assessment, okay? We can't do component 1 Learning Aim A, pass merit distinction, level 2 pass merit level 1. We can't do that many. So we've got merit, pass, distinction for level 2 for component 1. What's coming, which should be on the website by early December, will be the component 1 learning aim A, B, and C at level 1. These are all level 2, so there'll be another 3 of them for level 1, and then there'll be 6 for component 2, which will be a pass, merit, distinction at level 2 and a pass, I think it's pass merit at level 1. Okay. Yep, so this is where all of that that good stuff comes. I've also I've got this thing here which is in your materials. It's something that I built because I was trying to get my head around the assessment grid. If we look at component 1 here.
Oh, fantastic.
This might be useful. I mean, I don't know. It's just the way my brain works. It was, I was trying to understand, well, if you give that for learning aim A, okay, so that means that the student is at merit. He's still unclassified for component 1. What happens if he gets that for learning aim B? Okay, so he's got a level 1 merit for learning aim B, a level 2 merit for learning aim A. He's still unclassified. Okay, fine. So what happens if he gets this? So for learning aim C, he's got a level 1 pass. He's got a level 1 merit for learning aim B and a level 2 merit for learning aim A. Overall, by the way that BTEC rules work, that means that student overall for this component is a level 1 pass. So this is not a bad thing to maybe stick in front of the kids and say, look, it's your lowest common denominator that defines what your overall grade is for this component.
Oh, wow. Okay. I mean,
so this is a nice.
The other question, I mean, in related to what they said about the templates. So I completely agree in terms of template. We don't want to give them too much structure and etc. But are we allowed to give them any sort of writing frame?
No.
And not at all. Only during a mock or a trial period. Yep.
Yes, but remember, so avoid the terminology writing frame. That'll get you in trouble. Template is already dubious. So if there is a table that has titles, and this is what you've used in class to capture, the name of something, the location of something, the size of something. If that's a standard approach, it's a template. You've used it in class, right? In the live formal assessment, when the students come to do that job, they should naturally go to that template. This is how I did this in class. So why wouldn't I go grab that document and use that to capture the evidence in my formal assessment?
My worry is, would you guys come back and they say, well, look, listen, a majority of class are using this, just as you said, they've evolved, they've used that. But then it comes back saying, well, we've been providing them with templates during the formal.
You might get that question, but you explain that's not the way it's worked. You've standard ways of doing things which you've learned during the teaching part, and that's what they've adopted. There's nothing in the BTEC assessment rules that say that when they're doing their formal assessment, they can't have access to their classwork. They have access to the internet, they have classwork. You as the teacher, as the assessor, need to sign a document that says that it's their own work. Okay, your internal IVEA will sample all of your assessments, and and then that's how it works. So it's fine, and it's a discussion. Okay.
Okay.
And where you would get in trouble is, like if you actually literally hand out with the assessment, attached to the assignment brief, a bunch of templates that are too close to writing frames. That's to be avoided. And but the beauty is, do it in the teaching. If you need to review an interface, here's a good way of doing it. Do it twice, do it 3 times. What do you think of this approach? What would you do if you were asked in your formal assessment in 2 weeks' time to do a review of an interface? How would you do it? Yeah?
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Mohammed. Okay, we'll where can we find a copy of that tracker, please? So it's in the materials. It's also, I've put it on the Facebook page in the shared G drive. Please do have a play with it. Get back to me. Let me know what you think. Oh, Graham, the mic is down. Sorry about that. You can type your question in if you like. So I've got a question here on the chat. By the way, I'm conscious. So we're 8:37. I'm happy to stay here till 9. I completely get that you've got busy mornings. So just duck out when you need to leave, and that would be absolutely fine. Don't worry about manners. Yes, but then they said they are not allowed to use them, but the templates would end up identical. Law of evolution. So the thing is, you have, yeah, I get that. Yeah. So when the SV looked at the sample of students' work, and they'd see that the same table has been used to look at a user interface, to review a user interface. But your internal verification has already asked that question. You know, did you give them a template? No, it's part of teaching. Look, you know, so it's part of the teaching pack. So that gets through there, and you have the same discussion with your SV. Okay. The page that I started off with, let me see if I can find it again. I've probably overwritten it, so let's just go to it again. Support, see all topics, delivering BTEC qualifications. I'd really love if you could have a look at this and have a look through these steps and let me know, you know, give me brutal feedback. You know, it's awful, or, you know, why didn't you do this? Would it be better to do that? So, because we are continuing to review and improve this. I'm battling to get rid of the stuff that is quality nominee and not teacher stuff from the view, to make it like jump straight down into the delivery cycle, which is where I think our heads need to be. So please do have a look at that. I also have a, where am I going to find this? Bear with me. If I go to, I about every month I put out a newsletter. I hope you're all subscribed. You can find out how to subscribe on this page here. Please sign up to my subject advisor updates. I'm just going to show you the most recent one, because on it, if I can ever find it. So this is the newsletter. In the DIT here, we've got lots of information. These are the support group, support news. So this is hopefully will continue to be a really useful place to go. So do make sure that you're subscribed to my newsletter. It comes out at least once a month normally. The other thing is on the Facebook group. Let me just quickly go to that. Sorry, forgive the jumping around here. It's just want to try and get through as much as possible in a short time. If we look at the Facebook group, I did post on here a link to that page showing the BTEC journey and asking people to give feedback. And I believe there's a link to a form as well to now, yeah, using this link, give feedback on it. So it'd be really fascinating to let me know if you think it's useful. So like here, Victoria on the Facebook group has asked, is this for DIT teachers only? Well, it's not actually. It's the BTEC journey. We've designed it specifically to try and help, or, you know, I've been prompted to do it to try and help the DIT teachers, because I know that many of the people are coming from the old GCSE ICT, which is no longer, and other qualifications which are not, you know, so they're not much of my of our new teachers are not ingrained in the BTEC language and philosophy. So I just felt it was really something that was quite missing. So yeah, do please give some feedback on that. We'd be interested to hear. So hopefully you're all on. So we're arguing about semantics over templates, writing frame, and your version, standard ways of working. Any chance someone could explain this to an SV? So yeah, thank you. That's a great question. The SVs are trained, and there's a team of them. So, you just like in the past when you've been through moderation, there are really, really excellent moderators, and there are moderators that get a bit power mad. And, SVs have a range as well. The thing to remember is that the SV relationship should be supportive, must be supportive. Have a discussion early on with your SVs. I know they're not allocated yet. December, maybe January, but still it's early in the 2-year cycle. Have the discussions. Flag if you feel that the relationship is less than supportive, or that there's an issue of training or understanding between you and the SV that isn't going well. Raise it. Come via me. All of the SVs work for a principal standards manager who, for our qualifications in IT and computing, is a eminently sensible guy, and will intervene when when things are going awry, and will bring clarity to any misunderstanding or problems. So, the important thing to remember is that it's a supportive relationship. And not an examiner type, can't talk to me. You can talk, you can ask questions. Really good idea to have no surprises. When samples are going to be sent to your SV, you can also discuss what way that's going to work. If the SV would prefer access to your school system, then credentials can be provided, temporary access credentials, and he could log on, or a Dropbox. It's flexible, and the best thing of all is for there to be no surprises. If you're using a rather interesting spin on an assignment brief, which might end up with the evidence being of a unusual nature, I don't know, plays. You talk to your SV early and make sure there's no surprises, that they're ready and willing and able to access the evidence that they need to see. But you're right, no system is perfect, Graham, and you've got good and bad in all walks of life. So a play, yeah. So yeah, it's early, isn't it? I wouldn't, not that I'm recommending it. Okay. So let me think. Is there anything else that I wanted to? I've got a list of things that I wanted to cover: qualification, the FAQs, delivering BTEC, standardization, where the materials are. Oh, the other thing, I don't. My feeling is that there'll be less concern over the component 3, but just to show you, there's also a worked example on there for component 3, some sample mark learner work. So that is available. I guess, as I can well understand, that at this stage you're going to be focusing on trying to get components 1 and 2 sorted, external assessments, sample mark learner work. So, but that's nice. The component 3 is looking quite good. What I really like about it is there's a very short list of command words that are being used by the assessment team, and they've signed up to that. And we're working on getting the command word descriptions. If they're not retrofitted into the spec, then there'll be documents available soon. on the website that will help go through the requirements. It's a large component. Component 3 is a good bit of content in there, but the assessment is quite structured. It's already settled down. There's been a great deal of discipline put into the way that that's been designed. So hopefully, as the weeks and months roll by, we'll have a lot more good detail up on there to help you with. Okay, I've got Mohammed. Your hand is up. Do you want to ask a question?
Hi. Very quickly, I'm going to have to go as well. Is there any schools that are doing this very local to East London or a bit further afield that will be willing to network? Because I'm going to have to go now. And if so, are you guys happy me leaving my email and then you just sending me an email to liaise? I mean, that's to everybody in the group, basically.
Yes, there's 15 people here, but you know what I strongly recommend it. Well, there's not 15, there's about 9. But what I recommend you do, Mo, is put that up on the Facebook group. So, but the Facebook group, that's a perfect place to post, you know, say where you are and look for people to work with. Great idea. Good practice.
Thank you very much for all your help so far, Tim. I'm going to have to shoot off. Cheers. Bye.
No problem. Bye. Does anybody else have any questions at the moment? Oh, Facebook group, Graham. Yeah, Graham, if you, let's see, if you go to my homepage here, there's a link to the Facebook group right here so that you can join it. And at the moment, I mean, it's, let me see, it's grown, we're up to 880 members now. I'd love to get this up to 2,000 by the middle of spring next year. We're making good progress along that way. So do please join. It's a vibrant community. I get roundly slagged off on here and praised, and you know, it's your group. I created it, but I absolutely not in there with a heavy hand. This is for you teachers to work together and do things to make things better, despite us or with our help. You know, we're all in it together. So do please join that. So I'm conscious now we've got about 10 to 9. I'm pretty sure people are going to be having to run away, so please don't hesitate. The materials will that we've been looking at today are going to be on the in the materials pane and be available to you afterwards. So is there anything else that anybody would like to raise before we wrap it up? Will we get a copy of this recording? So I'll make a copy of this recording. It will be not available immediately, but if you want a copy, please email me at teachingict@pearson.com and I'll make a copy available to you. It's not going to be made available automatically to everyone, but just email me and I'll send you a copy of it. I need to take the swear words out and whatnot. Any other questions? Okay, so if there's nothing else, okay, Alex, pleasure. If there's nothing else, I think we'll call it a day, and I'll wish you a happy and healthy Thursday morning. I hope that the day goes well for you, and thanks so much for joining. And please do tell your colleagues to use us and to get every piece of help they can. Thanks, everybody. Bye.